if everyone is trying to find meaning and purpose in their actual job, many of us will be disappointed because
Okay.
not every job is going to give you that. That's just the reality of
Yes,
life,
of
right?
work. Yes.
And, we live in a capitalist society, like it or not. We need money to live our
To
lives.
live. Yeah.
That's the reality. And so I would encourage listeners to first and foremost think, what purpose is work serving in your life?
Hi there, and a warm welcome to the Habit Nerd podcast. I'm Dr. Bree Hearn, host and general nerd about all things habits. Over my 20 plus years working as a writer, educator, researcher, keynote speaker, and coach, I've realized that habits influence everything from our health to our productivity and even our relationships. It was Aristotle, in fact, who said we become what we repeatedly do. On this podcast, you'll learn from inspiring experts as they share the habits and systems that help them live happily, healthily, and to achieve enormous success in their chosen fields. Thanks for being here. I do hope that you enjoy the episode. Hi there, Habit Nerds, and a warm welcome and thank you for joining me today. It's my pleasure to welcome our guest. Now, Ange Davies is a wellbeing speaker. She's a leadership facilitator and a performance consultant with over 16 years of corporate experience across HR, senior banking, and high-performing teams. Through Ange's business, Mind.your.grit, she helps individuals and organizations unlock sustainable success without burning out in the process. Now, Ange has got a background in psychology, so drawing on her psychology studies, her lived experience with burnout, and her extensive background in leadership, she combines evidence-based insights with real-world strategies. She works with top organizations and driven professionals to embed habits that protect well-being and enhance performance at the same time. You can see why I have invited Ange on the Habit Nerd podcast today. Ange is also a mental health first aid instructor. She's a Pilates studio owner and she's the host of Work and Wellness, a podcast. Now, Ange and I launched our podcast on the same day, actually 6 months ago. So it's a great delight to be meeting Ange in person and to be able to access her excellent experience and her excellent work. Now, whether Ange is leading a workshop, whether she's coaching a client or speaking at an event, she brings a grounded, science-backed approach to helping people thrive at work and in their life. A warm welcome and thanks for joining us today, Ange.
Thank you so much, Bree. Thank you for that warm intro. I appreciate it.
All right, so let's dive into our questions now. I talked a bit in your bio, Ange, about the habits that protect well-being and enhance performance. But let's talk about you as an individual. What is a habit that you have that you're most proud of?
The habit I feel most proud of that I've really embedded very strongly in my routine is daily movement. For me, there are a lot of other habits that I have in my life, but daily movement has been probably the most profound and significant one for me. I have experienced anxiety and panic attacks in my life, and I feel that daily movement not only helps me focus and improves my cognition, it's not only good for my body, but I feel like it's been a real antidote for me, amongst other things, on helping to reduce my feelings of anxiety and my instance of panic attacks. And I feel that, they say, use motion for emotion, and it's certainly what I do. It changes every day. I don't do the same thing every day. I'm actually training for an ultra marathon at the moment, which I blame my husband for signing me up for. To be honest, we're running 53 kilometers with 2,000 meters of elevation, which I believe is about half of Everest throughout that 53 kilometers.
That is unbelievable.
My God, anyway, it's wild. But one of our philosophies in our life is to do one big hard thing every year. It's really good for our mental health. So that's it this year. So my movement at the moment is based a lot around that. But some days it does just look like walking down to the beach where I live. And what I try and do every morning, whilst, I'll book in Pilates classes or sort of program my runs, I do try and check in with myself every morning and see, how am I feeling? How are my energy levels? What am I really up to today? And I will switch things around depending on how I'm feeling for the day. But I think that's the habit that I'm most proud of, because it's the one that I have truly stuck to. Probably, how long have I been with my husband for? We've been together, I don't know, nearly 16 years. And I feel like he's a very good influence on me. And I feel like for the most part, I've stuck to that for a long time. So yeah.
That's, well, congratulations for the consistency there, Ange. Also for signing up for the ultra marathon. How many weeks or months are you out from start date now?
It is 4 weeks away, Brie.
Wow, that's so close.
I know, I'm terrified, to be honest, but I just need to keep reminding myself we're not doing it to win the race. I mean, God, there's, professional athletes out there who will do that, but it really for us was to get us both moving together, get us up every Sunday, and whatever the outcome is at the end, we've put in all of the effort. And I think for me, it really speaks to enjoying the process rather than worrying too much about the outcome. And, the people that we're becoming, the, activities that we're doing in the lead up to it is really what's more important to me than sort of what happens on the race day.
I completely resonate, and really thank you for pointing out those important things that I would have actually highlighted myself. The first part is that it's obviously what we would call a comprehensive habit. So even though somebody might see training for an ultramarathon or moving every day as something to support their physical health. Of course, it's doing that, but you didn't even mention physical health. You mentioned most predominantly your mental health and your emotional health, and the way it is supporting you with, a challenge like a tendency towards anxiety. And also, if we all had the one goal, which was to do the ultramarathon or win the ultramarathon, there's only going to be one winner. So it's about that really important reflection of the systems that gets you there in the first place. Yeah. And things get really hard, and I'm sure you're learning from a physical and a mental point of view throughout this training just how resilient you are, and being able to pivot and adjust and reflect on what it is that you're learning, but even how you're different from your husband in the training, and you're different from the other people that you're training alongside. So they're all really important reflections that we can gain from something like ultramarathon training. But I just want to thank you for highlighting, the vulnerability, obviously, that, it is something that is helping you with managing your tendency towards panic attacks. But also just that idea that any habit that's worth our time is normally a habit that bleeds across into other elements of our life in a positive way. And I think as busy people, if you do want to start something new, it's really great to reflect on all the ways that your life and your relationships and other aspects of your work, for example, will benefit from putting the effort into that new habit. And I can see your daily movement is absolutely doing that for you. So what a great example you are for the people that you work with and the people that you speak to.
Thank you, Brie. That's so kind of you to say. But, I agree wholeheartedly that daily movement impacts every other part of my life. It tells me that I'm a person who does what I say I'm going to do, and that flows through in work and relationships and all of that sort of thing. And you're so right. You learn so much about yourself when you go through hard things. One of the reasons that we try and do one hard thing every year is because it means when we go through hard times in life, it might be grief or death or different challenges, we've shown ourselves in other ways that we have the resilience and the strength to do hard things that we choose. And so when there are hard things that come through that we don't choose, we know we've got the skills to tackle those as well.
I think that's wonderful. And I also think, I feel more resonance with doing a hard thing every year than do something that scares you every day. You hear that and it does feel, I know it's the same philosophy, but for me, do something that scares me every day feels like something I need to put on my to-do list. Whereas do something hard each year is, you are putting those reps in, and then I would imagine next year the hard thing will be something different, and last year it was something different again.
Yeah.
So these are all pieces of evidence of the sort of person, as you say, that does what they say they are going to do. And also there's this thing, I often say it to my husband who suffers from anxiety too, that you've got a 100% strike rate of success up till today. So meaning you have survived every single thing that has happened up to this day in your life. So an ultra marathon training is when you do experience a job loss or a death or a separation in a friendship or something that's really challenging. This is some evidence there that you can do those hard things, and you've done many hard things before. And so it's about calling on a really deep skill set that you do recognize because it's familiar, because your body has engaged in that before. So that is incredible.
Super powerful. And, it's not always something physical, Brie, so it might be something that's cognitively hard or, that challenges me strategically. I started my own business a couple of years ago. For me, that was my big, hard thing that I was investing in for that year. So I think it doesn't always have to be a physical challenge. And I want to call that out, not everyone, we spoke earlier and, you're not going to run a marathon. It's not aligned with your values, right?
In no lifetime am I doing that.
Yeah.
No.
And so it's just about finding the different things for each individual. So I do want to highlight, it doesn't have to be a physical goal like that. It can be about thinking what's going to challenge you and stretch you as an individual that's in line with your values and your goals in life, and choosing that. So it doesn't have to be something physical.
Yeah, I love it. And also thank you for making the distinction, because I don't want people to turn off because they think that we're going to be discussing marathons, because as you've called me out, and I'm glad you did, because if you hadn't, I would have, marathons, not for me. So, the idea that we grow in kind of that area between where we are now and where the next goal is, that sort of stretch point is where learning happens. It's where growth happens. So being able to do something that frightens you, and even a micro thing. So you've said starting a business, but it could be for me starting a business, turning up online to do my first video, really scary. So it doesn't have to be a big goal, but it can be within a big goal, a few micro goals that,
of course,
prove to you that, as you say, you can do hard things. Now, Ange, you are an expert in wellbeing. What can you tell us about some of the habits we can think about to maintain both personal wellbeing and high performance at work? And the reason I've put "and" in there is because I would like to know, from your point of view, are the two connected?
They're absolutely connected, and I am of the strong belief that they are not mutually exclusive, that they should coexist, and in fact, your well-being impacts your performance at work. And I came from the school, I worked in banking for a lot of years, and the harder I worked, the higher I performed and the more burnt out I got, right? And that's what ultimately led to my first panic attack on the side of the road in my bank 4-wheel drive, with it shaking violently as trucks were flying past me on the freeway, literally thinking I was having a heart attack. And I thought, my God, how depressing if this is the end of my time in my bank 4-wheel drive, it was pretty sobering. And for me, it was a real turning point for realizing, hold on a minute, I can perform like this for a period of time where I'm not looking after my well-being, but it is not sustainable. And so what I talk a lot about is sustainable high performance, not just those bursts of high performance, but that you're actually going to be able to sustain it over the long term. And that's where well-being really comes into it. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard of the oxygen mask analogy. You've got to put your oxygen mask on first. But it is so, so important, because we cognitively and physically can't perform at our best if we're not investing in those areas of our well-being. So there are 5 areas that I talk about, Brie, that the science shows time and time again. So after I was on the side of the road, having had that panic attack, I thought to myself, how did I go from a high performer? I was always a high achiever. I led a high performing team to then turn up on the side of the road with panic attacks. And so that's where I signed up to study my postgrad study in psychology, because I wanted to understand more about what was going on in my brain, in my body, and how does one turn from someone who is an overachiever to someone who suffers from panic attacks. I mean, I subsequently learnt very interrelated. Typically, people who are high performing are typically quite high functioning, but also have experience anxiety and panic attacks as well.
Yes.
But what I started to see in the research as I was studying, particularly when I was studying the psychology of well-being, is that there were 5 areas that kept coming up time and time again that, when invested in from a time perspective, really had a huge ROI for the amount of time you put in versus what you get out from a wellbeing perspective.
Right.
And I'm all about high ROI. Being an ex-banker, what's the minimal input that we can get for the maximal output? Because as much as I love Dr. Andrew Huberman and a lot of those other, really science-based researchers, majority of us don't have time for a 3-hour morning routine, Brie, right? Like we just don't have that time. And the thought of trying to do that is more overwhelming than helpful.
That's right.
And so the 5 areas that come up time and time again that I talk about are mindfulness, sleep, relationships, nutrition, and movement. And they sound elementary, right? Like they sound like pretty basic things, but there are habits in each of those areas that we can invest as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day that will significantly improve our outcomes and our well-being. I'm not saying also that you have to invest in all of those areas. It's about being curious with yourself and just having a moment to rate how you're going on each of them, right? So for me, my movement's 10 out of 10. There's nothing that I feel like that I need to invest in more right now to do anything different that's going to improve that. I feel like I'm really good on that sense, right?
Yes.
But what often happens to me is when I get overwhelmed, I withdraw from my relationships because I feel like I don't have the energy and time. So it's really just about being curious with yourself and doing a self-audit on, of those 5 areas, where am I low? And then those are the areas that you might want to implement some habits to lift some of those areas. So as an example, at the moment, if I was to rate myself on that wheel and where I was doing well and where I wasn't doing so well, my sleep is really low at the moment is what I would say. And it's because sometimes, like the best of us, I have come back to scrolling on my phone before bed or things like that. So in that case, some of the habits that I would start to implement to improve my sleep would be getting 10 minutes of sunlight first thing in the morning, because that kickstarts your circadian rhythm. Dr. Huberman says this a lot. A good night's sleep really starts at the beginning of the day, not the end of the day. So how can we, get some extra sleep so that so that our sleep starts better at the end of the night? The other thing is not taking my phone into the bedroom, plugging it in outside of the bedroom, or if it's in the bedroom, having it out of reach so that you can't physically pick it up. You've got to get out of bed to pick it up. Or it might even be something like reading a fiction book before bed, right? These are all really simple things to do, Brie. They're not these outrageous things that you've got to do, but they have such huge bang for buck. And I tell you what, when I put my phone away from me and I read before bed, my sleep exponentially improves. So it's really about being curious with yourself, doing a little bit of self-audit in those 5 areas and figuring out where you're low, and just implementing habits on the areas you want to lift rather than feeling like you've got to overhaul everything that you do.
It's far less overwhelming, isn't it? And it's sort of more bite-sized. And I really like that the habits for you are about sustaining high performance. So I think that's so powerful, and it's something that I think a lot of us are fearful of. We're working really hard. How are we going to maintain this? And so those foundational structures, which are, your 5 areas, are almost like I'm almost thinking an analogy of like a house being built. Like that's the frame, isn't it? So we kind of put our energy in, as you say, just those things that we probably already know. And, what a gift you would be for audiences and, for people that you coach around helping them hone in on that auditing space of what is the one or two that could need some slight augmentation, just some slight tweaks. And then, as you say, they're simple things, but they just have such a huge impact, don't they?
Huge. And, the analogy I actually like to use is to build a very tall building. You need a very wide and strong foundation.
Yes.
And so that wide and strong foundation are these 5 habits so that you can build the tallest building of your performance that you want, right? But if you start building this tall building, and it will get to a point, right? You'll go and go and go and you think, oh, I'm doing well. But if you don't have those foundations, the building's going to topple over. And that's exactly the same for performance. Anyone can perform at a high level for a period of time while they're not focusing on well-being, but it has its limit. And that sustained performance is really about those foundational aspects that will allow you to build the tallest building that you wish to build.
That's a fantastic analogy, much better than my frame of the house. I think the tall building is similar in the same vein. Something I love about your messaging, Ange, is that, and it's, often I say this podcast guests drop into my life at just the right time for the message that I need to personally hear. So I hope that's the case for the listeners as well. I hope they're able to connect with, one or many things for any of these interviews. But for me, the relevance of your work is that I've been grappling at the moment with, when I speak to people or when I work with coaching clients, I grapple with this idea that we need to be efficient and have sort of strong productivity and time management hacks whilst we're working so that we can get our work done and do things that we like outside of work. The reason I don't like it is because I want to position work can be integrated as part of a wonderful life. And I know myself, I've always been really lit up by the work that I do. And so I really like this idea that being able to be well and have those foundational structures is actually making you well at work whilst you're there and able to perform at the job in the way that you want to do it. Because for me, the great feeling at the end of the day after doing really good work is what I'm seeking. It's not clocking off so that I can have fun or clocking off so that I can see my friends or be with my family or whatever it is. So I suppose, it's this, when you're kind of seeking clients and when you're positioning yourself in business, there needs to be this, do this so that this is the outcome. And for me, the outcome, as I say, is not get work out of the way so life can begin. It's live a wonderful life whilst you're working as well as whilst you're doing the other things as well. So the reason I say that is because my next question is, what systems or behaviours do you suggest or do you advocate for, Ange, in your work that make work feel like it energises us and doesn't exhaust us?
I think the biggest, and it's maybe not a system, but rather a belief system, I suppose. And that's really about purpose. What purpose does work serve for you as an individual? And it is going to be different for every person. Some people will be like you, Brie, and they will have really strong meaning and purpose and enjoyment in their work. But not everyone is like that. Some people go to work because that work gives them an income that allows them to have their values and purpose met in another way.
Right. Like travel, for example, to pay for their holidays or...
Absolutely. It can be so many things. It can be to provide for their family. It can be so that they can have a home that's meaningful for them. It can be so many different things. And I think it's first and foremost about really understanding what purpose does work serve for you within really your value set. Because if everyone is trying to find meaning and purpose in their actual job, many of us will be disappointed because not every job is going to give you that. That's just the reality of life, right?
Of work,
And, we live in a capitalist society, like it or not. We need money to live our lives.
To live,
That's the reality. And so I would encourage listeners to first and foremost think, what purpose is work serving in your life? Is it giving you that meaning and you feel like you've really got a very strong why in your work based on the work that you do? Or is the meaning so that you can live the sort of life that you want to live in line with your values outside of work? The minute we can delineate that is the minute that we put less pressure on ourselves for work to be everything in our lives. And so it doesn't actually matter which one it is, Brie. Both are right. It just matters what is right for you.
Right.
And so that's the first delineation that I actually think is really important, is purpose. What purpose is work serving? And then being really clear on your values as an individual to make sure that whatever purpose it's serving, it's leading into those values. So you mentioned go on that family holiday earlier, right? One of my values is adventure. I love adventure, and it's really important that I have adventure in my life, and my husband's the same. And so for us, going on an adventure every year is really important. So, you know, work needs to allow us to do that. But equally, I find a lot of purpose in the work that I do as well. But I'm very clear on how everything I'm doing is playing back into our values, so that when you go to work, you know exactly why you're there and you take it for what it is. And it makes sure that it's not depleting you, but really that it's serving you in your way of living your values.
That's really powerful. Yeah. And much more inclusive, because, as you say, there would be people out there who don't love their work, but that, you know, the meaning that they're gaining is because it is a means to an end, and that end is really wonderful and lights you up and excites you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where people feel depleted is where it's not serving either of those purposes, Brie. It's not allowing them to live into their values because maybe they can't take leave, or, you know, they're not spending enough time with their families, and that might be a value of theirs. But also the work itself is not meaningful. So where I find people really getting depleted at work is, you know, workload has an impact. Like, the reality is workload has an impact, but the real impact is where it's not serving your values, whether it's from the actual work you're doing or for what it's providing your values outside of work. That's where it's really depleting.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I don't want to diminish it by saying it's simple, but it's empowering, because you can quite easily diagnose the issue, which one it is of those two, and then you can make some changes, I suppose. So workload is significant, and I do understand what you're saying there, but and you know more about this than me, Ange, so I'm really interested in your insights. But this idea of burnout is not necessarily working hard, but it's working on the wrong things for you. And so this idea that you would be working in work that you don't believe in, or that is against your value set, or it's not doing what it needs to do in terms of meeting the purpose as you've outlined it to be.
And, you know, you speak about the energetic envelope, Brie, you know, and I think, you know, where we are withdrawing from our energetic bank when it comes to work, and it might be more energy because we're not aligned or whatever it is. So it's all of those things. Burnout is when you're working incongruently with your value set, but it is also when we're not allowing that time to pour back into that bank account, right? When we're not topping up our well-being. So that can come both from a lack of purpose or alignment with values, but it can also come from workload. You know, if you're at that rev limiter 24/7, to use another analogy, and you're just, you know, you're burning through fuel and you're not refueling that fuel tank with your well-being habits, that can also lead to burnout. So it can be both, you know, so it's not always because you're burning the candle at both ends, but it's also not always because you're working outside of your values. It can be both of those things, or either one of those things,
or a combination of the two. And I think your expertise is so valuable, because the foundational 5, you know, foundation things, if we got those right, then the burnout around, you know, using our energy in the wrong way, not getting enough sleep, not hydrating, or not using, you know, nutrition to be able to fuel our bodies to be able to work long days or whatever it is, we would be able to diminish the chance that it's one of those things, and then it's an easier solve if it is a work issue, that then, you know, you can interrogate and, you know, be well at work. So yeah, that's really powerful. I'm glad I asked the question, because Your answer is very insightful and very actionable in terms of, in terms of strategy. So yeah, that's hugely helpful. Now, Ange, we've gained a huge amount from you today. How can people find you? How can they work with you? Where can we dive into more of this amazing work?
So you can find me at mind.your.grit on Instagram. I share a lot of tips on there as well that people can utilize in their daily lives. I've also got a podcast called Work and Wellness, or on LinkedIn, Angela Davies as well. I share different articles, different thought leadership. And if anyone's got any corporate teams that they would love to help invest back in the team, then absolutely happy to chat to anyone.
I feel like your inbox will be flooded from listeners here because, as I said, it's your research informed, your evidence informed, which is why I was, really excited to have you on as a guest, Ange. But the more important thing is that it's just very realistic and very actionable and very, it doesn't feel a bridge too far for anyone. And I feel like, that's the way that you deliver this message with actionable strategies, but, you're such a warm communicator as well. So I have no doubt that you're hugely valuable to anybody that you get to speak to. So Ange, thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm looking forward to when this episode goes live. I was delighted to be a guest on your Work and Wellness podcast. So perhaps we'll be able to do some, cross sharing on our platforms, and our audiences will be able to enjoy your work and hopefully my work on yours as well. So thank you again, Ange, for all of your generosity and your insights on the Habit Nerd podcast today.
Thank you, Brie. I have loved chatting with you, and I think we both share the same sentiment that having something research informed is so important, but making it really practical and implementable for real life and not over intellectualizing it is also really important. So the science is important, but so is being able to be actionable. So thank you so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks again, Ange.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Habit Nerd. I hope you found some new inspiration, learned something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you did enjoy the episode, I would be really grateful if you could please leave a 5-star review, as it helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it should only take you 5 seconds. If you're keen for more tips and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow Habit Nerd.